My name is Lucas. I am 26 years old. In the eyes of Lily's friends, I am a standard loser. No money, no background, no luxury car, and not even a respectable-sounding job. The only thing I can show for myself is probably my cooking. Yet it was precisely the skill that others looked down on that allowed me to win over the campus beauty, Lily. She is beautiful, smart, and comes from a wealthy family. No one knows that she is actually the sole heir to the Heller family. And when I first met her, I didn't even know who she was. That night, she sat alone in a corner of the university cafeteria, staring blankly at a plate of unpalatable spaghetti. I walked past her with a bowl of beef rice I had made myself. "Yeah," I asked with a smile. "How is it?" She wiped her mouth and said, "I think you should marry me." I thought she was joking at the time. Later, I found out that she had really fallen for me. We dated for 3 years. During those 3 years, I cooked countless meals for her. She also stayed by my side through the most ordinary days. But I never could have imagined. One day, she would stand in front of me and say to me, "Lucas, let's break up." She remained silent for a long time. Finally, she looked up. "I think we're not right for each other." I didn't say anything. She continued, "You know, the lives we'll face in the future are completely different. My father wants me to take over the family company. And you," she paused, "you just want to run a small restaurant." I smiled. "So," she bit her lip, "so I think we should stop here." I stared at her for a few seconds, then asked, "Is that what you think?" She froze. "What?" "I'm asking, is this really your own idea?" Lily didn't answer. I already understood. Her 2 best friends, Sophia and Ella. These 2 women have thought I wasn't good enough for Lily since college. The one thing they said the most was, "Besides knowing how to cook, what does Lucas have?" I used to not care, because I felt that as long as Lily believed in me, it was enough. But now it seems she has finally believed others. I stood up and poured the last glass of red wine on the table into my own glass. "All right." Lily looked up abruptly. Since you've made up your mind, let's break up." She seemed surprised that I would agree so readily. "You're not going to ask me why?"
No.
"You're not going to ask me to stay?" I shook my head. "Lily, if someone has already decided to leave, nothing I say will make a difference." Her eyes suddenly reddened. "Lucas." I picked up my jacket. "You take the cake. I remember you like it." After saying that, I turned and left. Behind me came her very soft voice. "I'm sorry." I didn't look back, because in that moment, I suddenly felt that the 3 years of our relationship didn't seem as solid as I had imagined. After Lily got home, the first thing she did was tell her 2 best friends. Lucas and I broke up. Sophia was drinking coffee when she heard this. She nearly slammed her cup on the table. "Really?" "Yeah. You finally came to your senses?" Lily didn't say anything. She lowered her head and looked at her phone. The screen showed the chat with Lucas, the last message having stopped 3 hours ago. "Be careful on the way." A very ordinary sentence. Yet it made her nose tingle with emotion. Lily fell silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, "So, will you see Lucas again?" "I hope you won't see him either." The air suddenly went quiet. Sophia's smile froze. "What? Why?" "Because..." Lily thought for a moment. "I'm afraid you'll continue to influence me." Sophia stood up abruptly. "Wait a minute. You 2 broke up. What does that have to do with us?" Ella also frowned. "Yeah." Lily looked at them. "Didn't you always think he wasn't good enough for me?" "Yeah." Sophia opened her mouth, but couldn't say a word, because she suddenly realized that she was indeed happy that Lily had finally broken up. But she also suddenly realized a very serious problem. Who would cook for her from now on? She looked at Ella. Ella was looking at her too. The 2 of them stared at each other for a full 5 seconds. Ella shook her head. "What about you?" "I only know how to make coffee." Lily froze. "What are you doing?" "To apologize." "Why?" "Lily." For the first time, She felt that she might have done something very wrong. It was 8 o'clock at night. My restaurant had just closed, and I was cleaning up in the kitchen. The door was pushed open, and Sophia walked in. "Lucas." She flashed a brilliant smile. "We're still friends, right?" I lowered my head and continued wiping the table. "Of course." "Really?" "Yeah." She breathed a sigh of relief. "That's great." Then she pulled out a chair and sat down. "So what are you doing tomorrow?" I looked up. "What?" "Lunch, of course." "I'm not making it." Sophia froze. "Why?" "Friends shouldn't provide food and drinks for free." The smile on her face gradually faded. "You didn't used to be like this. Before, you were Lily's friend. Now you're just a regular friend of mine." She gritted her teeth. "Can't regular friends have a meal together?" "Of course." "How much?" I casually named a figure. Sophia's eyes went wide. "That expensive?" "The steak is imported." She fell silent. Just then, Ella walked in from outside. "Don't mind her." She walked up to me. "Lucas, I want to talk to you." "Go ahead." She handed me a folder. "There are problems with your restaurant's accounts." I paused for a moment. Opening it, I saw the operating data for the past 3 months. I frowned. "You investigated me?" "Not exactly an investigation." Ella's tone was flat. "When I was helping Lily organize the quarterly reports for several restaurants under her family's hotels, I took a look at your publicly available business registration information, as well as the pricing and sales data on food delivery platforms. Your restaurant clearly has good customer traffic, but the profit has always been low, and the ingredient procurement costs are ridiculously high. Also, you handle purchasing, prep, cooking, cashiering, and cleaning yourself every day. If you keep going like this, you'll work yourself to death." I looked at her. "So, I can help you." I laughed. "Didn't you always think I was a loser?" Ella fell silent. "I used to. And now." She looked at me. "Now I think." She hesitated. "You might just not know how to market yourself." I looked at her seriously for the first time. This woman might have a sharp tongue, but she definitely has a business mind. "Why did you help me?" She looked away. "Because..." Sophia nearby suddenly interrupted. "Because we want to keep eating." Ella glared at her. "Can't you shut up?" "No." I couldn't help but laugh. This was the first time I had laughed since we broke up. Over the next few days, my life suddenly took a strange turn. Every morning, Sophia would send me a message. "Lucas, what time do you open today?" I wouldn't reply. 5 minutes later, "I was just asking." Another 5 minutes later, "By the way, do you have any extra steaks today?" Ella was completely different. She sent me a spreadsheet every day. Purchasing lists, cost sheets, customer traffic analysis, marketing plans. She even redesigned the staff schedule for me. I couldn't help but ask, "What exactly do you want to do?" She replied, "To prove that you aren't a loser." I stared at that sentence for a long time, then smiled. But what truly surprised me was Lily. She didn't contact me again. For 2 whole weeks, not a single message. I thought I would be sad, but I wasn't. I started focusing on running the restaurant. Ella's advice was effective. We cut the menu in half, stopped chasing expensive ingredients, and started making home-style dishes that were more suitable for the nearby residents. Sophia, meanwhile, was in charge of promotion. She filmed a video of me making a steak and posted it on social media. Unexpectedly, the video went viral the next day. People commented, "Who is this chef? It looks so delicious. Address, please. I'm going to eat there." 3 days later, a long line formed outside the restaurant for the first time. I stood in the kitchen, so busy I was practically on my feet all the time. At 11 o'clock at night, the last guest left. I sat by the door, too tired to say a word. Sophia handed me a bottle of water. "Lucas. Have you noticed?" "What?" "You're actually pretty amazing." I smiled. "You're just realizing that now?" She nodded. "Yeah, I was blind before." I hadn't even spoken yet when Ella suddenly walked over. "Don't get too cocky." Sophia glared at her. Aren't you the same? Ella fell silent. Then she said softly, right, I am too. Meanwhile, Lily was in a meeting at the family hotel headquarters. She sat at the very end of the conference table, while her father sat in the main seat. After the meeting ended, his father suddenly asked, "How have things been between you and Lucas lately?" Lily paused for a moment. "We broke up." His father was taken aback. "Why?" "Because." She didn't finish. Her father looked at her for a long time, then finally sighed. "Just make sure you think it through yourself." That night, back at home, Lily was scrolling through her phone when she came across a video by chance. In the video, Lucas stood in the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, focused on searing a steak. Flames flared from the bottom of the pan, and his profile looked particularly quiet in the light. The video title had just one line: "A small restaurant, a 3-hour wait for a single steak." Lily stared at the video for a long time. In the comments, someone asked, "Does the owner have a girlfriend?"
Sofia replied, "No."
Someone else asked, "Why?" Sophia. "Because his ex-girlfriend was too stupid." Lily's face flushed red instantly. She exited the video, but a few seconds later, she clicked back in. She didn't know what she was expecting, until she saw a comment, "The owner is so handsome." She suddenly felt a bit unwell. The next day, as soon as I opened the shop door, I saw Sophia standing at the entrance. She was wearing a beautiful dress and holding breakfast in her hand. "This is for you." I paused for a moment. "What?" "Breakfast. I've already eaten." "Then save it for lunch." "No need." She was silent for 2 seconds. "Lucas. Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "I don't." "Then why did you reject me?" "Because I don't want to accept charity from others anymore." She froze. I continued, "Before, you thought I wasn't good enough for Lily. Now suddenly you're treating me so well. I don't know what you really want." Sophia fell silent. Then she said softly, "If I said," she looked up at me, "that I've really started to like you?" I didn't expect her to be so direct, and for a moment, I didn't know how to answer. Just then, a voice came from the restaurant entrance. "Then the same goes for me." I turned around. Ella was standing there. "Me." "Sophia, what are you doing here?" Ella, "Chasing someone." Sophia, "What gives you the right?" Ella, "Because I'm smarter than you." "You." The two of them started arguing right there and then. I stood at the kitchen door, suddenly feeling like the world had gone mad. In the evening, Lily came. She was alone. She stood at the doorway, not coming in, just quietly watching me. I walked over. "Why are you here?" "To eat. The menu is here." She took the menu but didn't look at it. "Lucas. How have you been lately?" "That's nice. I heard your restaurant is doing very well." "It's all right." She lowered her head. "That's good to hear." I didn't say anything, nor did she leave. After a long while, she suddenly asked, "Do you already have someone you like?"
If Rosa, no.
She breathed a sigh of relief. But just then, Sophia poked her head out from the kitchen. "Lucas, go on a date with me tomorrow." Ella appeared as well. "He promised to have dinner with me tomorrow." Lily's expression changed instantly. "You guys," Sophia said with a smile. "What? You don't want them anymore? Yet you won't let others like them?" Lily didn't answer. She just looked at me. Her eyes gradually turned red. Then she turned and left. I stood there, feeling heartbroken for the first time. But I didn't chase after her, because I knew that if she really wanted to come back, she should walk back on her own, not have me pull her back again. The next day, Ella suddenly came to find me. "Lucas, I found out something." "What?" She handed me her phone. On it was a news article from many years ago with the headline, "Legendary chef Elena retires from the culinary world, transfers all shares to employee trust." "I know." I smiled. "What does this have to do with me?" Ella frowned and handed me a more detailed document. "Your mother did indeed leave something for you back then, but you never touched it." I looked down at the document and said nothing. Ella continued, "Those shares have all been used for employee benefits. The annual dividends are automatically transferred into a trust fund specifically covering medical and education expenses for retired employees and their children. The remaining portion," she pointed to the last line, "the only thing that truly belongs to you is this old restaurant." I fell silent for a moment. This restaurant was where I lived with my mother when I was a child. After my mother passed away, I renovated it and turned it into the small bistro it is today. I have always known about this. Before she passed away, Mother mentioned it to me. She left her most important things to the employees who had worked alongside her for years. Their children needed to go to school, their elders needed medical care, and fulfilling those responsibilities gave her more peace of mind than leaving me a sum of money. As for that old restaurant, she said it was a nest for the two of us, mother and son. I never saw anything wrong with this arrangement. It was her money to begin with, and she could give it to whomever she pleased. And what I wanted was never any shares or brand. I never saw anything wrong with this arrangement. It was her money to begin with, and she could give it to whomever she pleased. And what I wanted was never any shares or brand. I shook my head. It means you never have to prove anything to anyone. She pushed the documents back in front of me. Your starting point is a place many people spend their whole lives trying to reach. But you've never taken it seriously. I smiled. When did I ever say I needed to prove anything? She froze. I closed the document. I just want to make a good meal. She looked at me, her gaze turning complicated for the first time. Lucas. I really like you more and more. Just then, a hotel under Lily's family suddenly had a food safety scandal. Numerous complaints appeared online. The hotel's stock price was affected, and the media besieged the headquarters. Lily's father fell ill, and all the pressure fell on Lily. It was the first time she truly faced the entire group alone. In the conference room, all the executives were arguing. Some suggested immediate compensation, some suggested shifting the blame to the suppliers, and others suggested temporarily closing the hotel. Lily, however, realized that none of these methods addressed the root cause. She thought of Lucas, so she went to his restaurant late at night. I was washing dishes at the time, and seeing her standing at the door, I froze. "Lily!" She didn't speak, just looked at me, then suddenly asked, "Can you help me?" I put down the bowl in my hand. "What happened?" She told me the situation. After listening, I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took out a pen and paper. "Give me the kitchen procedures for the hotel for the past 3 months. I smiled. "I run a restaurant." For the next 6 hours, we went through everything item by item. Procurement, storage, transportation, cold chain, kitchen, and staff. Ultimately, I discovered a detail. One supplier had changed their refrigerated transport method. The new system met the minimum standards, but it did not integrate well with the hotel's existing storage procedures. The problem was not the ingredients themselves, but a temperature lapse of about an hour between the processes. Lily looked at the record and finally understood. "So it was here." I nodded. "But you have to resolve it yourself. I'll be with you." She looked up at me. Her eyes read, "Lucas." Thank you." Lily personally held a press conference. No shifting blame, no dodging responsibility. She admitted that there were loopholes in the hotel's management and announced a rectification plan. Suspending the supplier involved, overhauling the cold chain process, retraining all kitchen staff, and releasing third-party inspection reports. The media was not initially convinced, but a month later, the hotel's food safety rating rose again. The crisis was finally over. For the first time, Lily had solved a major problem in the family business on her own merits. Her father sat in his office, looking at her. "You've grown up." Lily smiled. "Thank you." Father fell silent for a moment, then asked again, "This time, was it Lucas who helped you find the problem? I thought you two broke up?" "We did break up." Her voice softened. "But when I went to see him, he didn't ask a single thing. He just sat there and kept me company for 6 hours. Her father didn't respond. After a long while, he stood up, walked to the window, and said with his back to her, That kid is a bit stronger than I thought. He gestured for me to sit without any pleasantries. His first words were, Lily told me you helped her review the kitchen workflow. The corners of his mouth twitched, but he didn't smile. You certainly tell the truth. The waiter brought 2 glasses of water. He didn't move, continuing to look at me. That gaze wasn't like he was scrutinizing me, but more like he was confirming something. After a few seconds, he asked, You still like her? So how do you plan to support my daughter? I put down the glass in my hand. I won't support her. He frowned. I continued, She is capable of supporting herself. I just want to live with her. When she is tired, I cook. When she is happy, I keep her company. When she encounters difficulties, I stand by her side. That is all. He picked up his cup, took a sip of water, put it down, and glanced at me again. Only then did he ask, Do you know what Lily is set to inherit in the future? I know. Don't you feel the pressure?
No.
Why? I smiled. Because I like Lily, not her family's company. He fell silent for a long time. His fingers tapped lightly on the desk, as if pondering something. Then he suddenly asked, What if she had nothing? I replied, Then I'd just buy a little less steak. He froze for a few seconds. With the rim of his cup against his lower lip, he glanced at me again. This look was a bit lighter than before, and finally the corner of his mouth moved. In the end, he actually smiled. You kid, at least you're not as useless as they say. He stood up, picked up his jacket, took a few steps, then stopped and looked back at me. She has always listened to others since she was a child. You might be the first person to let her make her own decisions. With that, he left. I sat there, finished the water in my glass, then got up to pay the bill. The waiter said, Sir, Mr. Heller has already paid. I nodded and walked out of the restaurant. The wind outside was a bit cool, so I stood at the door for a while. My phone vibrated. Lily sent a message. Did my father give you a hard time?
Itipat. No.
She sent another one. That's good. I stared at the screen, waited for a moment, but there was no next message. I put my phone back in my pocket and walked toward the restaurant. After walking about 20 steps, my phone vibrated again. Lucas. Tomorrow night, can I still come to your restaurant to eat? I thought for a moment and replied with a single word. Come. At 6 o'clock the next evening, Lily appeared at the restaurant entrance right on time. She was wearing an off-white sweater, her hair tied back casually, looking as if she had come straight from work. When she walked in, Sophia was at the bar drinking the lemon water I had poured for her. She had been coming by every day lately to sit for a while, claiming she was helping watch the shop, but she was actually just waiting for dinner. Ella sat in the corner with her computer, revising my purchasing list without even looking up. As Lily walked in, all 3 of them went quiet for a second. Sophia put down her glass and raised an eyebrow. Well, Lily ignored her, walked straight to the innermost seat, sat down, then looked up at me. What do we have today? It's all on the menu. Then I'll order what you make. I glanced at her, turned around, and went into the kitchen. She ate that meal very slowly. She used to eat quickly, especially when she was hungry, but today she chewed bite by bite, as if reluctant to finish. Halfway through her meal, Sophia leaned over and said something. Lily glanced up at her, then continued eating. At 9 o'clock at night, Lily stood up and walked to the bar to pay the bill. I told her the amount. She scanned the code to pay, and then stood there without leaving. Lucas. I'll be back tomorrow. With that, she left. Sophia looked at me. Then at the door, opened her mouth as if to say something, but finally only managed to squeeze out, Is she for real? I didn't say anything. For the entire following week, Lily came every night. Sometimes arriving at 6, sometimes at 8, but she never came empty-handed. Sometimes bringing a bottle of red wine, sometimes a box of fruit, and once bringing a dog-eared cookbook, saying she had dug it out of her father's study, an old edition from the 1980s. She placed the cookbook on the bar counter and pushed it in front of me. My dad said to give this to you. I flipped through 2 pages. They were filled with handwritten notes. I looked up at her. Did your dad write these? He learned to cook for a while when he was young, but later gave it up. She lowered her head and smiled. He said that giving up cooking was one of the best decisions he ever made in his life. I couldn't help but laugh. Sophia and Ella continued to come watch the shop every day as usual, but the atmosphere was clearly different. Before, the two of them would sit on either side of the bar, occasionally leaning over to exchange idle chatter. But since Lily appeared, they spoke less. Sometimes Sophia would sit in the distance holding a glass of water, watching Lily and me talking at the kitchen entrance, with a complicated expression. Ella kept her head down typing on her computer, but every few keystrokes she would look up to glance over. On the fourth evening, Lily left earlier than usual. She took a phone call, waved at Sophia and me, and left. The moment the door closed, Sophia slammed her water cup onto the table.
No.
I turned around. What do you mean, no? Sophia looked at me. She's making a move on you. Ella closed her laptop. And she's pursuing him quite seriously. Sophia turned to look at her. You noticed. She comes right on time every night, brings something every time, doesn't leave after eating, and stands by the bar chatting with him for at least 10 minutes. Ella recited the details expressionlessly. And she hasn't worn the same color outfit in the last 3 days. Sophia paused for a couple of seconds. You even keep track of that? My observation skills have always been better than yours. Sophia opened her mouth but didn't argue. Then she turned to me. Lucas, what is your attitude? I leaned against the kitchen door frame and thought for a moment. If she can come, I'll let her come. So you plan to get back together? Let's see how she performs. Sophia stared at me for a long while, then finally gave up and leaned back against the chair. I'm done for. Ella didn't say a word. She lowered her head and opened her laptop again, but I saw her fingers pause over the keyboard for a few seconds. Another week passed and Sophia and Ella called me together. Lily hadn't arrived yet, so it was just the three of us in the shop. Sophia spoke up. We've decided to drop out. I froze. Drop out of what? Sophia sighed. The competition. Ella nodded. Lily won. I said helplessly. When did I ever say you could compete? None of your business. Sophia pouted, then looked at me. Lucas. We used to really hate you. I know. We thought you weren't good enough for Lily. I know that too. She fell silent for a moment before saying, later we realized that it wasn't that you weren't good enough for her. It was that we had no idea what it truly means for two people to be right for each other. Ella picked up the conversation. We thought Lily needed a man whose family background matched hers. Later we realized that what she truly needed was a man who would let her be herself. I smiled. Thank you. Sophia suddenly reached out. Then that last meal. I refused outright. No. Why? You are no longer guests. What do you mean? I pointed at the kitchen. Make it yourself from now on. Both of them widened their eyes at the same time. Lucas! Just then, the door was pushed open, and Lily stood in the doorway, holding a bag of oranges. She looked at Sophia, then at Ella. What are you doing? Sophia stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out. I give up. Lily froze. What? Ella closed her laptop, paused for a step as she passed Lily, and whispered, Treat him well. I walked over and took the tangerine from her hand. Come on in. Tonight I'm making sweet and sour pork ribs. Lucas. I want to pursue you again. I put down my pen. Why? I remained silent. She asked softly, Do I still have a chance? I pointed to the kitchen. You're making dinner today. Me? I don't know how. Then learn. She looked at me and suddenly smiled. Okay. I looked at the plate and fell silent. She asked cautiously, Does it taste bad? She froze. You don't mind. Disgusted. She froze. Then her ears slowly turned red. I put the steak in my mouth. Although it was truly awful, I felt it was the most special meal I had ever had. 6 months later, Lily and I were preparing to get married. The day before the wedding, Sophia suddenly came to find me. Lucas, what's wrong? One last question. Speak. Will you still cook for us in the future? She was so excited she almost jumped up. Ella walked over from the side. Really? I nodded. But there are conditions. What? You two are in charge of washing the dishes. Both of them fell silent at the same time. Sophia. I suddenly feel like we shouldn't be getting married. Ella. Me too. Lily walked over from behind and linked her arm through mine. You two can go now. Sophia. Choosing romance over friendship. Lily smiled. Yes, that's me. On our wedding day, I stood on the stage, watching Lily walk toward me step by step in her wedding dress. She wore no expensive jewelry and made no deliberate show of her status. She simply smiled at me. She walked up to me and whispered, Lucas. I used to think that my life should have a perfect plan, inheriting the family, managing the company, and marrying someone everyone approves of. Until I met you. Tears welled up in her eyes. You made me realize that true happiness has no standard answer. I held her hand. So, what is your answer? She smiled. Someone waiting for me when I come home every day. A hot meal in the kitchen, and no matter what happens, I know he won't leave. I looked at her. My answer is the same. What? You. She laughed and threw herself into my arms. Applause erupted from the audience. But the most excited ones were not Lily's father, nor the relatives and friends, but Sophia and Ella. The two were fighting over the last piece of wedding cake. This is mine. I clearly saw it first. I couldn't help but smile. Lily smiled too. In the 3rd month after our marriage, Lily officially took over the family group, and I continued to run my small restaurant. Someone asked me, Your wife is so rich, why do you still run a restaurant? I answered, because I like it. And besides, I glanced at Lily, who was secretly sneaking a bite of steak in the kitchen. Someone needs me to provide for them. The reporter was stunned. You mean Lily? I shook my head. No, Sophia and Ella. Off camera. 2 people shouted at the same time, Lucas! The entire restaurant instantly erupted in laughter. A year later, my restaurant had opened 3 branches, but I still insisted on cooking personally. Breaking up with me back then. She froze. Why? She fell silent. Then she walked over and hugged me from behind. So, are you happy now? Just then, the door was suddenly pushed open. Sophia poked her head in. Lucas, is dinner ready? Ella was behind her. I smell steak. Lily immediately frowned. Why are you two here again? Sophia said matter-of-factly. Because we don't have boyfriends. Ella nodded. So we can only come to you. I looked at them helplessly. What exactly do you take me for? Sophia replied without hesitation. A friend. Lily glared at them. And the 2 of them exchanged a glance and smiled at the same time. Family. And Lily finally realized that what she needed was never a man who could match her family's wealth. She needed someone who would be willing to hold her hand, whether she was an heiress or just an ordinary girl. I picked up the last plate of steak. All right, time to eat. Looking at the chaotic dining table, I couldn't help but smile. This is probably the life I wanted. No wealthy family infighting, no scheming, no one needing to prove they were better than anyone else. Just hot meals, the people I love, and 3 women who are never full.